This is the Sleep Historian. Each night we explore the echoes of the past, stories told slowly to calm the mind and ease you towards sleep. If you enjoy these quiet journeys through time, please like and subscribe, and let the next story begin. Night rests softly over Rome as it is today. Streetlights trace pale halos along cobbled lanes. Cars move in distant, muffled streams. Above them, something older rises in shadowed arcs of stone. The Colosseum stands with its outer walls broken, its inner rings exposed, like ribs revealed beneath skin. Grass grows in cracks. Iron gates close off corridors once filled with noise. You stand at the edge of the arena floor, looking up at tiers of empty seating. The space is quiet now. The sand is gone. Only the hollow, steady breath of wind remains. As your eyes adjust, details sharpen in the dim light. Blocks of travertine sit worn and softened, their edges rounded by centuries of weather and touch. A single cat moves along a ledge, silent and sure-footed. Far above, the sky glows faintly with the reflection of the modern city, a soft haze rather than stars. This amphitheater feels like a shell, vast, intricate, waiting. Here, gladiators once fought for survival, honor, spectacle, and the approval of thousands. Let the present fade. Let footsteps, voices, and distant trumpets return. Time drifts backward, and the arena fills again. You step out into a different Rome, centuries earlier. The city is smaller, its skyline a mixture of tiled roofs, columns, and wooden scaffolding. The air smells of smoke from cooking fires, damp stone, and animals being driven through narrow streets. In this earlier world, before great amphitheaters, gladiatorial combat is still young. Its roots lie to the north, with Etruscan funerary rites, where armed men fought beside the graves of the dead. Romans adopt the practice, turning solemn blood offerings into more structured displays. Small wooden arenas rise in the forum, temporary stages for restless crowds. Walk toward one of these early spectacles. Wooden stands creak under the weight of spectators. Senators in bright-bordered togas sit in reserved rows, while traders, artisans, and laborers press together on rougher benches. Voices blend into a low, layered murmur. The munus is officially a duty, a gift to honor the dead, but it also serves politics. The sponsoring family earns gratitude and attention. Below, on packed earth, gladiators face one another in pairs, their equipment simple but distinct, shields of varying size, helmets with different crests, short swords catching sunlight. Combat begins, ritual and entertainment intertwined. Over time, Rome grows, and the games grow with it. Stone replaces wood. Temporary stands give way to permanent amphitheaters in cities across the Republic. Gladiators become a familiar presence, not only at funerals, but at festivals, triumphs, and political campaigns. The crowd learns to read their equipment, their styles, their reputations. They recognize Murmillos with heavy shields, Thracians with curved blades, and lightly armed fighters who rely on agility. Officials track costs, numbers, and outcomes in careful records. What began as a solemn gesture towards the dead steadily shifts into a recurring feature of public life. Now the city changes again. The Republic falls. Emperors rise. Imperial Rome hums with a heavier, more ordered energy. Marble-faced temples stand beside brick insulae stacked with small apartments. Aqueducts cross the horizon in long, disciplined lines. With imperial power comes imperial spectacle. The Colosseum, or Flavian amphitheater, takes shape under Vespasian and Titus, its oval footprint carved into the heart of the city. Workers lift blocks into place with cranes. Ramps and corridors appear like veins in stone. This building is not just architecture, it is a statement. Rome's might made visible in tiers of seating and sand. Stand in the half-complete structure as builders move around you. The smell of lime mortar mixes with sweat and dust. Foremen shout short commands that vanish into the open sky. Wooden scaffolding hugs the rising walls. In the arena's center, engineers sketch designs for mechanisms that will lift animals, scenery, and fighters from below. Emperors imagine games so varied they feel almost impossible. Mock sea battles, staged hunts, mass contests. The Colosseum is designed to hold them all. Underneath, a network of corridors and chambers forms, unseen from the seats above, but essential to the spectacle. Elsewhere in the city, a different structure takes shape. The Gladiators School. Not as grand as the arena, the ludus is nonetheless carefully planned. High walls enclose a rectangular complex. Inside, a central training yard lies open to the sky, ringed by small cells where fighters will sleep. A kitchen, infirmary, armory, and baths cluster along the edges. The doorways are narrow, the gates reinforced. The school is both barracks and prison, workplace and home. Here men will learn to fight with precision, under discipline, not as wild brawlers, but as trained performers of structured violence. Rome's appetite for games draws people from many paths into the gladiator's life. Some are prisoners of war, taken from distant provinces and marched in chains. Others are condemned criminals, sentenced ad ludum, to the school rather than immediate execution. A few are slaves sold directly to lanistae, the owners of gladiator companies. Rarest of all are volunteers, desperate debtors, thrill seekers, or men hoping fame might outweigh the risk. Whatever their origin, once enrolled, they share the same status, property of the school, bound by oath, marked by the brand of their new profession. You pause in a quiet corner of the city as evening approaches. The noise softens into scattered conversations, the clatter of carts on stone, the distant call of a street vendor packing away his stall. Somewhere beyond the rooftops, the unfinished Colosseum silhouettes against the sky. Behind another wall, in the new gladiator school, footsteps echo in a training yard. Rome does not yet know the full scale of what is coming. It only senses that larger, more orchestrated spectacles are on the horizon. A future where gladiators will stand at the center of public attention. Morning light spills into the training yard of the ludus. The ground underfoot is packed earth, worn smooth by repeated drills. Wooden posts stand in a row, scarred by countless blows. Around them, gladiators practice with wooden swords and shields heavier than their real equipment. You hear the steady thud of impacts, the breath of men pushing their bodies to fatigue, the short commands of instructors pacing between them. Dust hangs in the air, catching sunlight in pale streaks. The mood is tired but controlled. Here, combat is stripped of spectacle, reduced to technique and endurance. Step closer to one trainee. His head is shaved to keep lice at bay. A leather collar marks him as property of the school. Sweat runs down his back as he repeats a simple sequence. Step, shield, strike, recover. Each movement is corrected by the wooden rod of his trainer, an experienced gladiator known as a doctor. The rod taps his leg to adjust stance, brushes his shoulder to lower it, nudges his hand to protect his throat. Every adjustment reduces chaos, turning survival into learned habit. Small corrections today may mean life instead of death in the arena. Weapons training extends beyond simple swords and shields. In another part of the yard, lightly armed recruits learn to cast nets and wield tridents. Nearby, others handled curved blades or short stabbing swords paired with tall rectangular shields. Equipment defines type, and type defines role. The retiarius uses speed and reach. The secutor, facing him, carries smooth, rounded armor designed to resist entanglement. Each pairing offers contrast, heavy versus light, speed versus resilience. Trainers emphasize balance, how to attack without overcommitting, how to fall safely, how to make a strike look convincing while staying within practiced forms. Inside the building, the corridor smells of oil, cooked grain, and bodies resting between exertions. Gladiators eat a diet richer in carbohydrates than most imagine. Barley porridge, bread, beans, vegetables, sometimes cheese or cuts of meat. They drink sour wine mixed with water, and a vinegar-based drink that helps restore salts. Later writers will call them hordearii, barley men. In the small kitchen, a cook stirs a large pot, while a helper stacks loaves on a wooden shelf. A fighter passing by pauses, inhales the warm, simple scent, and continues toward the baths, shoulders rolling with tired stiffness. The infirmary occupies a quieter corner. Light enters through a high window, falling in a pale rectangle across rough wooden beds. Bandages hang dried on a line. Clay jars hold salves and herbs. A medicus moves carefully between patients, checking stitches, changing dressings, noting which injuries will heal quickly and which may end a career. Gladiators form a strange category in Roman medicine. They are valuable investments, worth treatment and experimentation. Their scars tell stories of both risk and resilience. A young recruit watches as an older fighter has his arm rewrapped, studying the calm acceptance on his face. Baths offer a brief moment of comfort in a hard life. Steam gathers above the warm pool as fighters lower themselves into the water, easing muscles sore from drills. Conversations here are low and practical. Strategies, opponents, rumors of upcoming games. A rough joke passes between two men. Another sits quietly with his back against the stone, eyes closed, just listening. The smell of hot water, oil, and damp stone replaces dust and sweat. For a short time, the walls of the ludus feel less like a prison and more like a contained, separate world with its own routines. At night, the cells close. Each small room holds a low bed, a simple blanket, perhaps a small personal item if the occupant has managed to keep one. Torches in the corridor cast flickering light through narrow openings. Some men lie awake, replaying drills in their minds, or imagining the arena they have not yet seen. Others sleep deeply, exhaustion heavier than fear. Somewhere, A guard's footsteps mark slow circuits along the outer wall. The school rests, but does not forget its purpose. It holds men in place, shaping them quietly toward the day they will perform. Occasionally, a visitor arrives at the ludus, a potential buyer, an official, sometimes even a curious senator. Today, the lanista leads such a man along the walkway overlooking the yard. He gestures calmly as he lists names, origins, and fighting styles, like a merchant discussing precious horses. Below, the men continue their drills, aware of eyes above them but focused on their tasks. The visitor pauses to watch a promising pair, nods thoughtfully, and makes a mental note. Gladiators are human beings, but in this system they are also assets, trained, cataloged, and assessed for their value in blood. Dawn arrives on the day of games. Rome wakes earlier than usual. Vendors wheel carts toward the Colosseum, their wooden wheels rattling over the paving stones. They carry baskets of bread, figs, nuts, and flasks of watered wine for the crowds. The air is cool, edged with anticipation. At the foot of the amphitheater, a queue is already forming. Citizens, freedmen, slaves, all mixing according to ticket and social rank. Marble plaques and painted signs direct each group to their proper entrance. The building feels alive, absorbing people through dozens of arches, preparing to release sound back into the city. Inside, workers move quickly in the shadowed corridors. Torches throw warm light onto numbered stairways and painted walls. An attendant sweeps dust from steps that will soon see thousands of feet. In the hypogeum below the arena, handlers check cages where animals pace or lie still. Leopards, bears, perhaps a lion, brought at great expense from far provinces. Trainers test the mechanisms that will lift them into view. Chains clink softly. A carpenter tightens a rope, listens for strain, and then nods in satisfaction. These unseen preparations form the hidden backbone of the spectacle the crowd will witness above. You emerge into the seating tiers as the first rays of sun touch the upper ring. The arena below is covered with fresh sand, pale and leveled. A faint smell of straw and dust rises from it. At the topmost rows, the poorest spectators settle in, grateful simply to be inside. Closer to the arena, better seats fill with merchants and craftsmen. Reserved places near the podium belong to senators and magistrates. Cushioned chairs in a shaded box await the emperor and his household. Layers of society arrange themselves in stone, every position signaling status, proximity, and privilege. As the crowd swells, a murmur rolls around the amphitheater. Children point toward the arena, their voices bright against the lower hum. Sellers move along the aisles with baskets, calling out simple offerings. A musician tests a trumpet, the note sharp but brief. The sun climbs higher, warming stone and faces. A gentle breeze flows through the open arches, carrying in city smells of cooking, animals, and dust. People have left work, shops, and daily concerns behind. For today, attention turns entirely toward the sand below, toward the lives that will be risked for their entertainment. In the gladiators' waiting room beneath the arena, the mood is more contained. Light enters through small openings high on the walls, casting narrow beams across helmets lined on a bench. Armor hangs ready, greaves, arm guards, breastplates, each tailored for a specific type of fighter. A slave polishes a helmet's visor with a cloth, until it reflects a distorted fragment of his face. Nearby, a gladiator tightens the leather straps of his sandal, fingers working with practiced precision. The noises from above are faint here, like distant surf. The men wait, thinking of drills, opponents, and the unknown. The games follow a rough structure throughout the day. Mornings are often filled with hunts and displays involving wild animals. Midday might bring executions of condemned criminals. The main gladiatorial bouts usually come later, when anticipation has fully built. Today, the pattern remains familiar. Trumpets sound. The crowd quiets in a low wave. A gate opens and the parade begins. Officials, standard bearers, and gladiators enter in order, circling the arena. From your seat in the stands, you see plumes, crests, and polished metal catching the light. Names are announced, reputations invoked, wagers whispered between neighbors. For a moment, focus on the faces rather than the armor. A veteran gladiator nods to a section of the crowd that often supports him. A younger man glances quickly at the emperor's box, then away, reminded that his fate can be decided with a gesture. Another looks up toward a small group of fellow slaves who have been allowed to attend, searching for encouragement. The parade is not just ceremony, it is presentation. Each fighter is shown to the audience, to potential patrons, to Rome itself. The sand under their feet feels firm, but the future remains uncertain. As the parade ends, the gladiators leave the arena again, returning to their shaded rooms below. The crowd remains in its seats, shifting, talking, tasting the air of expectation. Animals appear for the morning's hunts, archers and spear throwers stepping carefully around hidden trapdoors. Trainers call commands, and the first contests begin. For now, the men who will fight later watch from the darkness of their waiting area, or listen to the distant roars. They stretch, adjust gear, or sit quietly. The day is long. The defining moments of their lives will occupy only a few minutes of it. Back in the Ludus some days earlier, the same gladiator we have followed through training stands in the yard at dusk. He is no longer a raw recruit. Scars mark his arms and torso, some white and faded, others fresher. A small tattoo above his wrist records a past victory with simple symbols. The evening air cools the sweat on his skin. He practices alone now, repeating movements he could perform without thinking, but still refining angles, timing, distance. Each strike lands on the wooden post with a controlled thud. Routine has turned fear into a disciplined, steady focus. After training, he returns to his cell. Inside, a small oil lamp casts a warm, steady glow on the rough walls. On a shelf sits a tiny clay figure, a crude model of a helmet he once saw on a visiting officer. It is the only possession he made himself. He sits on the edge of his bed and unwraps a bandage from his hand, flexing his fingers slowly. Outside, the sounds of the school quieten. Fewer footsteps, softer voices, the occasional bark of a distant dog. The approaching games are close enough to feel, but not yet breathing down his neck. On some evenings, the lanista calls selected fighters into a courtyard to meet potential patrons. Tonight, a local merchant stands with a cup of wine, watching a brief demonstration. The gladiator we follow performs carefully choreographed exchanges with a partner under torchlight. The blades are blunted, but the movements echo real danger. Applause from the small audience is polite, measured. The merchant nods approvingly, asks a few questions about records and style, then hints at possible support. A patron's favor might mean better equipment, gifts, or even eventual freedom. For now, it is simply another uncertain promise hovering ahead. Not all relationships between gladiators and the outside world are formal. Occasionally, the school's fighters appear at banquets as living decorations, standing silently in full gear while guests admire them. Sometimes, admirers send small tokens back: flowers, ribbons, coins, notes. In the cells, these things are examined with quiet curiosity. Do they mean anything beyond momentary fascination? A scrap of cloth tied around a wrist, a coin kept hidden in straw, become private reminders that the world beyond the walls still sees them as individuals, not just silhouettes behind helmets. Fame and objectification blend into a complicated shadow. Within the school, hierarchies form. Successful veterans receive better rations, more comfortable sleeping arrangements, and a measure of respect. They mentor younger fighters, sometimes with patience, sometimes with harshness shaped by their own experiences. Our gladiator listens to one such veteran describe an opponent's habits: the way he feints low but favors a high strike, his tendency to overreach when he senses weakness. These details matter. In a contest where death is a constant possibility, knowledge becomes a quiet kind of armor. Information passes in low tones, shared between men who understand the stakes without needing to name them aloud. Occasionally, a woman passes through the yard under escort. A visitor, a relative of staff, or a rare female gladiator, a gladiatrix, on her way between training areas. Her presence shifts the atmosphere slightly, a reminder that life outside the school has many shapes. In some periods, women do fight in the arena, though less commonly and often as novelty. Their inclusion speaks less of equality and more of spectacle's hunger for variety. For the men of the ludus, these brief crossings of paths emphasize how narrow their own world has become, bounded by walls, drills, and scheduled appearances. At night, before a major set of games, sleep comes unevenly. Some gladiators rest quickly, veterans grounded by experience. Others lie awake, listening to the muted sounds of the city beyond: wagon wheels, distant laughter, a snatch of song from a nearby tavern. Our gladiator traces a scar on his chest with a fingertip, remembering the blow that caused it and the narrow margin by which he survived. He thinks of the next day, but not in vivid images, rather as a simple, solid fact. He will enter the arena, do what he has practiced, and see what follows. Dawn finally breaks, and the school stirs early. Equipment is checked. Straps are replaced. Edges are tested under careful fingers. The lanista reviews the program with an assistant, confirming which men will fight which bouts. A slave hands out small linen bags of chalk to dry hands for better grip. Our gladiator eats a plain breakfast: bread, olives, watered wine. Slowly, without rush. The walk to the Colosseum is not long, but it feels like a crossing between worlds. The routines of drills and meals fade behind him. Ahead lies the arena, the crowd, and whatever verdict the day will bring. Back in the Colosseum, the day has advanced. The morning's hunts are over. The sun now hangs high, casting short shadows. The sand shows marks of hooves, footprints, and drag lines that attendants quickly smooth with rakes between events. A faint metallic tang lingers in the air, mixed with sweat and spilled wine. The crowd adjusts on the stone seats, some covering their heads with cloth to block the brightness. Trumpets sound again, signaling the transition toward the main bouts. Conversations hush into an expectant murmur. The mood settles into a focused calm, like held breath before a decision. Below the arena, our gladiator stands in a dim corridor with several others. The gate ahead is closed, but light seeps underneath in a narrow line. A priest moves along the row, offering a brief ritual, sprinkling salt, speaking a few formal words to the gods, perhaps to Nemesis or Hercules. Each man responds in his own way. A nod, a whispered prayer, or a simple, practical silence. Guards adjust the bolts. A handler checks the hinges one last time. The gladiator flexes his fingers around the grip of his weapon, feeling the familiar weight anchor his thoughts. The gate lifts. Brightness floods in, sharp after the corridor's gloom. The gladiators step forward into the arena, boots pressing into the sand with a soft, muffled crunch. Noise rises from the crowd in a layered wave. Shouts, whistles, calls of names. From your imagined vantage in the stands, you see their equipment clearly now. Our fighter carries a large shield and short sword, helmet crest low and rounded, designed for close quarters endurance. His opponent across the sand bears lighter gear, built for speed. The editor of the games, seated near the emperor, signals for the contest to begin. The opening movements are cautious. Each man tests distance with small advances and retreats. Shields angle, weapons shift, feet slide to find firm footing in the sand. The crowd's noise dips, then swells again with each feint or near contact. You hear the ring of metal meeting metal, the quickened breathing of combatants, the faint scuff of sand under rapid steps. There is no wild chaos here. Years of training compress into structured exchanges. Each strike is calculated, each block deliberate. The space between them tightens and opens, like a lung drawing breath, as they search for advantage. At last, a decisive moment arrives. The lighter fighter overreaches on an ambitious attack, his momentum carrying him a fraction too far. Our gladiator pivots, shield deflecting the blow, and responds with a controlled counter. The strike lands, not in gruesome fashion, but with enough force to bring his opponent to the ground. Sand sprays under the falling body. The crowd erupts, then modulates to a focused hum as they watch what follows. The defeated gladiator lies on his back, arm raised in a gesture of appeal, seeking mercy. His breath is visible, fast and shallow in the heat. All eyes turn toward the editor of the games. This official, sometimes the emperor himself, holds the authority to decide the defeated man's fate. Contrary to later legend, gestures are not always as simple as thumbs raised or lowered, but the crowd's reaction certainly influences the outcome. Some spectators call for mercy, admiring the fallen fighter's skill. Others demand a final blow, seeking closure to the contest. Our victorious gladiator waits, weapon in hand, chest rising and falling steadily. He watches the editor, not the crowd. Whatever decision is made, he will carry it out as required. Today, the editor signals mercy. Perhaps the defeated gladiator has fought bravely in previous games, or the sponsor prefers a balanced ledger of lives preserved and lost. Attendants rush forward, guiding the injured man from the arena to receive medical care. The crowd reacts with a mixture of relief, approval, and scattered disappointment. For our gladiator, the bout is over. He lifts his weapon briefly toward the editor and the watching masses, then turns to leave through the same gate he entered. His steps are measured, neither triumphant nor subdued, simply steady, aware that fortune has favored him for now. Not all contests end so gently. On other days, in other bouts, the signal goes differently, and a life ends quietly in the sand. Even then, the killing stroke is delivered without flourish. Attendants remove the body swiftly, covering it with a simple cloth. The arena is raked, the surface smoothed, and another pair enters. For the crowd, the day continues, a series of peaks and lulls. For the fighters, each bout marks a turning point. Survival, injury, or death reshaping the small world of the ludus. The Colosseum swallows these outcomes and moves on, its stones absorbing memory. As afternoon fades, the games near their conclusion. Shadows lengthen across the arena, stretching from the podium toward the upper seats. The air cools slightly, easing the heat that is pressed on faces and stone all day. The final event ends to a chorus of cheers, applause, and tired conversation. Trumpets sound once more, signaling dismissal. People rise from their seats, stretching stiff legs, gathering children, finishing last bites of food. The amphitheater slowly empties, its echoing interior returning to a gentler hum. Sand lies marked and irregular, holding the day's story in lines and indentations. Below, the hypogeum remains busy. Animals are returned to cages or finished off by handlers if injured beyond recovery. Workers coil ropes, oil mechanisms, and inspect trapdoor hinges for any damage. The gladiators retreat to their quarters, some supported by companions, others walking on their own. Our fighter sits on a bench while an attendant cleans a shallow cut on his arm, wiping away sand and blood with a damp cloth. The sting is modest compared to what could have been. He feels tired, solidly present, more aware of the wooden seat beneath him than the crowd that once roared overhead. In the days that follow, the rhythm of the ludus resumes. Training continues, though intensity may lessen briefly to allow recovery. New recruits arrive, eyes wide as they take in the seasoned fighters around them. Stories of the recent games circulate in quiet conversations. Who fought with unexpected skill, who received mercy, who did not return. In a small corner of a nearby cemetery, simple tombstones mark the resting places of gladiators who fell. Some carry brief inscriptions, names, ages, origins, a mention of victories. Others bear only a symbol or a fragmentary line, worn by weather and time. As years pass, attitudes toward the games shift. Emperors use them to display generosity, to appease restless populations, to celebrate victories or distract from difficulties. Philosophers debate the morality of watching men kill or risk death for entertainment. Some Romans criticize the games as cruel or corrupting. Others defend them as demonstrations of courage, discipline, and Roman superiority. Early Christian writers, in particular, condemn the spectacles, warning that attendance dulls compassion. Yet the Colosseum continues to fill. Tradition, habit, and the allure of shared excitement keep its seats occupied long after doubts have been voiced. Eventually, larger currents of history reshape Rome itself. Economic strain, political instability, and external pressures erode the foundations of imperial power. Maintaining grand spectacles grows expensive. Wild animals become harder to obtain in large numbers. Emperors face new priorities: defending borders, managing crises, negotiating with rising forces. Imperial edicts increasingly limit or ban gladiatorial combat, sometimes on moral grounds, sometimes practical. The amphitheatres do not empty overnight, but their busiest days pass. The profession of the gladiator, once central to public life, gradually fades from living memory and moves into the quieter realm of stories, inscriptions, and ruins. Centuries later, the Colosseum stands partially dismantled, its stones repurposed for other buildings, its interior altered by time, earthquakes, and human reuse. Travelers from distant lands visit, sketching its arches and speculating about its past. Romantic writers imagine doomed fighters saluting emperors, crowds screaming for blood, exotic beasts prowling the sand. Some of these visions are accurate, others are embroidered by imagination. Archaeologists eventually bring more clarity, studying bones, weapons, carved reliefs, and the layout of schools and arenas. Layer by layer, the historical reality of gladiators emerges, complex, structured, and deeply human, beyond the stereotypes. In modern museums, glass cases display gladiatorial helmets with elaborate crests, visors pierced with small holes, and cheek guards shaped to protect while concealing. You might see a heavy shield leaning against a wall, its surface repaired and repainted multiple times, or a short sword worn smooth at the handle. Nearby, simple tombstones stand upright on clean floors, their Latin inscriptions translated on discreet plaques. Visitors move slowly past, reading, imagining. Each object, once part of a living body's routine, now serves as a quiet anchor for memory, connecting us to individuals whose voices no longer sound. Return now in imagination to the empty Colosseum at night. The crowds are gone again. The arena floor, partly reconstructed, lies quietly under artificial lights. A few tourists linger at the edges, listening to guides or simply taking in the space. Wind moves through the open arches, carrying the distant sound of traffic. The stones do not speak, yet they hold the weight of thousands of lives spent within their boundaries. Fighters, workers, spectators, sellers, officials. Gladiators were not just symbols of violence. They were people navigating survival, duty, and fleeting moments of honor under the gaze of a city. Let your thoughts drift gently through everything you have seen. A quiet school behind high walls, where men drilled with wooden swords. The early arenas of the Republic, the rising grandeur of the Colosseum, the layered crowds arranged in stone. The steady discipline of training, the routines of food, baths, and sleep. The brief, intense moments on the sand when years of practice compressed into a few heartbeats. The long arc of history carrying gladiators from living presence to remembered figure. Their world settles now, softening into distance, like an echo fading along a vaulted corridor of time. Return to your own room, to the calm around you. The sounds here are small and familiar. A passing car, a settling floorboard, or perhaps only the quiet rhythm of your breathing. Outside, the night is no longer an arena, just an expanse of darkness, holding its own stillness. The story of gladiators moves to the background, part of the wider tapestry of the past. You are not in stone tiers or under bright sun. You are safe, warm, and at rest. Let your body sink into comfort, thoughts slowing like steps after a long walk. The night is yours now.